Welcome to the Engerati studio. We are located at European Utility Week. I am Denise from Engerati. And in the studio with us we have Kevin from Bitstew Systems. Thank you very much for joining us on the last day.
Oh, thank you for having me here. I'm looking forward to the chat. So.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. How have you found the event so far?
It's been fantastic for us.
Great.
Europe's a big expansion opportunity for Bitstew, and we're really looking forward to a number of opportunities. The traffic through the booth has been really good, and we have excellent juice that we're inviting people to come by.
fresh fruit juice, very healthy stuff, right?
Very,
yeah.
very, yeah.
Okay, good. All right, let's talk about the Internet of Things revolution. We were having a brief chat beforehand. It's obviously expected to have a major impact on the energy industry and on utilities. What's driving this revolution, and what are these impacts, do you think?
The impacts are significant to the European utilities, and there's many of them. The main drivers are going to be energy efficiency. It's driving innovation and new energy sources. Is a big part of it. Reliability of the energy grid. It has a big impact in economies. They're driving new competition. They want the retail market. They want to be able to generate innovation in Europe and drive new business. So there's many factors that are driving this challenge that the utilities are now facing. It's a 100-year-old business now having to really jump and leapfrog directly into the industrial internet. And that's a significant challenge.
It's a big jump, yes. Lots of changes that need to be made. There's obviously a lot of challenges, and they know that. How can they turn these challenges into opportunities?
So the challenges, part of the big thing that the European utilities have to face is recognizing what those challenges are. And it's the challenges around the adoption of new technology, but it's also transformation of the business. There's significant business transformation that has to happen. One of the challenges we see, even here in the conversations that we're having at the European Utility Week, is how do you manage low voltage networks in order to deal with the new distributed generation that's coming online. That's creating challenges with the network operators, service operators, and the retailers as well. So recognizing those challenges is the big aspect. And the next step is to really go through a personal transformation within the utility to make sure that they can adopt new technology, and then they can manage that new technology, and then they can leverage it for future business. That's going to be the key.
Now, where does Bitstew Systems come into this? How can you enable this easy transformation, really turning those negatives into really good opportunities for the industry?
What we're doing is, we've been down this path quite a few times with utilities in the past. We've been working in this transformation for the smart grid for about 10 years now. The technology that we've built within Bitstew is really to enable utilities to take advantage of the new connected network sensors, to pull that data back. And that's one of the big challenges, but it's also a massive opportunity for utilities, is you now have visibility into how energy is distributed across the network that they've never had before. And that's a fantastic opportunity. So how do you leverage that? And the best way to leverage that is through data. So now you have millions of connected devices. Pulling that data back is a big challenge, but it's also a massive opportunity if you can make heads or tails of it. 90% of that and greater is going to be noise. So the whole advantage that Bitstew has around our artificial intelligence engine is to sift out the noise to create the nuggets of information that can help the network operators improve the reliability of the network. The energy efficiency can be driven. Costs can be driven down for consumers of energy, and more innovation because they now know what's happening on the grid itself.
Perhaps a hard question to ask, or maybe even to answer. What will happen if they do not make this transition, if they don't embrace these opportunities?
That's going to be an interesting one to answer. The biggest challenge that I see that they'll face is disintermediation. They'll become irrelevant. And we see that in utilities now scrambling to catch up.
But that's what it is.
It is. Distributed generation, especially in Europe, if you look at Germany, the German market has actually adopted that quite well. And that's putting pressure on the traditional businesses that are starting to lose revenue. You see that with other utilities. They're now afraid of that revenue base getting lost, and they're looking at new business models. and that's scrambling. So if you don't accept that there is going to be this change, the chances are that you go through the disintermediation. That's one of the biggest risks.
Before I ask you what your recommendations are to utilities, taking those steps towards making this transformation within that space, what is your perception, your company's perception of Europe and the utilities? Are they keen to make these changes? I know it will vary across the regions, but what is your general consensus of Europe as a whole?
I think overall I would say that they're keen to make the changes.
Right.
There's a lot of regulatory pressure to make the change, but there's also a lot of pushback on adopting new technology because the transformation is hard. They're making a significant change.
Sure.
And actually executing on it, I would see, is very difficult. In the European market, driving the retail side of it is going to create challenges for the operators.
Yeah.
And that's what we see happening in Europe now. And that's going to require a lot of pain and aggravation, probably over the next 5 to 10 years, on how to deal with who owns the data, who gets the data, how the data can be leveraged, and how the costs are going to be distributed across all the participants, retailers, operators, service providers.
Right.
And we see a lot of pushback in Europe on those different models, and I expect probably in the next 5 years there'll be a bit of a transformation again to leverage the energy data that's coming through. Data is going to be a commodity that can be traded back and forth. It'll be a new exchange mechanism.
First steps, what should they start with? What should they prioritize? Because it's obviously a big path ahead of them. Where should they start?
The best way to start is to look at managing the energy grid itself.
Right.
Retail is definitely a good driver, but you have to manage energy. And it's all about wires. It's all about putting new distributed generation sources on there. And if you don't get a handle on that, the consumers are going to suffer just in power quality alone. So I think the focus does need to change in Europe into how the power gets generated, how it gets distributed, how the wires are managed, and how the data now goes back to the network operators and the DSOs. And that's going to be, I think, the biggest focus that they have to look at. The adoption of technology, the industrial internet, where we started off in the conversation, is now get the right technology out there so you can get the right data back. If you put the wrong technology out there to get the wrong type of data that's needed for this in the long haul, you'll be replatforming again in another 5 years. So I think the focus has to really be on managing the energy flow.
Right. And also just getting the appropriate solution, right? Because you don't want to get the technology that is not going to work for you in 5 to 10 years' time.
Definitely. We actually see that in the Australian market because it's always good to be a pioneer, and the state of Victoria in Australia was one of the pioneers. So you can always tell a pioneer with all the arrows in their back.
Right.
Bit of a joke there, but the reality is that they have really been innovative.
Right.
But what they're realizing is because they've got the retail market and the distribution market, they have competing demands.
Right.
And they're now replatforming again because they've realized that there's competing demands there.
Interesting. Okay. My last question to you: what is Bits2 Systems' strategy now going forward? What are your plans now for the next couple of years?
So a big plan for us is expansion into Europe. We see Europe as a fantastic market. We see a lot of opportunities with just the challenges that are going to be faced by the utilities. So we're investing quite heavily into the European expansion model. We've now got offices in the UK, Madrid. We're expanding further into different countries within Europe. The other focus that we're doing is that we want utilities to be self-sufficient. We don't want them to be dependent on always coming back to vendors or going to service providers in order to do the things that they want for innovation. So we're focused heavily on building out our developer network. We have utilities today that are building up new algorithms. They're looking at weather models. They're now looking at how to share and collaborate that with those models with other utilities. And we want to expand that into Europe. So we can see utilities in the UK
Yeah.
collaborating with utilities in Spain and France and Germany in order to understand and model
Yes.
the energy power.
Yeah.
But to share those algorithms and those new innovative applications.
Yeah, it's
So
all
that's
a
a
lot
big
about
focus.
shared learnings as well, isn't
It
it?
is,
So that
it
you're
is.
not reinventing the wheel every time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Part of it is the other challenge, and this is worldwide, not just with the European utilities, is the gray hairs. I've got a few of those myself, and the gray hairs are going to retire.
Gives character.
I try to convince myself that's the case. But losing that knowledge, we don't want
Yeah,
utilities to lose the knowledge. So
All
the
right.
developer network is really creating the collaboration so they
Yeah.
don't lose that knowledge.
Super. Thank you so much for your time, and
Yeah.
I hope you thoroughly enjoy the last day of the event.
Oh,
and,
I've been enjoying it. It's
Sure,
been
we'll
great.
see you again next year.
No, thank you.
Thank you so much to our viewers for joining us. There are other interviews that have taken place over the last 3 days, so do go and have a look at those. Thank you.